I wanted to ask a very important question, and I'm going to interview 5 people about this question and a follow-up question, and it is about London and the times that we are living in right now. It's a very important question. It is begged to be asked, and it very much is something that a Londoner like myself, and a Londoner like yourself who's watching can reflect upon. And so I say, here is the question. I decided to interview my mum. She has a background in working in the magistrates court, and now she is working in the Crown Court. So I thought she would have something very interesting to say regarding why there is so much crime going on in London at the moment. Hi, so coming from working in the magistrates court and now working in a Crown Court, I wanted to ask you a very important question. Why do you feel violence is increasing in London today?
Violence could be increasing because of unemployment issues, where drugs are concerned, mainly drug offences, drink driving, youngsters that majority of the people are young people.
Okay.
Basically they haven't got jobs, and basically on their free time I suppose they do these burglary crimes.
So you feel like it's the youth, you feel like,
Well, I would say majority of them are youths.
Okay.
The younger people, and maybe up to like 30 to 35.
Okay.
But you have a few that obviously are older. But it's with the young ones, I find it's more.
Do you feel like these crimes are prevalent as in certain areas? Like certain areas, there's just more
certain areas
crimes in London?
Well,
I mean, this is the capital, of course.
Yeah, in London there's quite a lot of knife crime going on at the moment.
Okay.
Drug issues, there's lots of that going on. But then crime is all over the place now. So it's not just one place, but London is the majority of it.
A lot of the problems stem from in London.
Yes, I think it could cause where just people that are not working, not getting the opportunity to get jobs, where they haven't got the experience, maybe that could be issues. The next person I decided to interview is my sister. She has a background in human resources, so that means part of her work is basically checking the backgrounds of potential employers, and I thought this would be an interesting insight, because I believe that a lot, employment is very hard to find, and so again, this is something that very much contributes to some of the problems that is going on right now in London. Hi, so I wanted to ask you a very important question. I know that you come from a background in HR where you're very accustomed to checking the background of potential employers. Now, obviously, employment is, a problem in this country, and eventually, usually it leads to crime. So I wanted to ask you, aside from that, why do you feel violence is increasing in London?
I think violence is increasing because there's not enough police officers around, I feel like, to catch these kind of criminals that are doing it. There's insufficient supply of people out there on the roads, and I guess a lot of money and time goes into investing in kind of police officers to ensure they're at the right place. And I feel like that's probably part of the reason why violence is increasing, because people get away with certain things, or they're not kind of cool, and there's not enough resources to be able to kind of be out there to catch these people, to be able to follow up, do these investigations. There's not enough resources out there.
So you feel like there's not enough stop and searches and just like security?
No, there isn't, and there's not enough resources to do that. And I feel like more needs to be done to kind of step up and to put officers where they need to be in the right locations.
So you feel like the government needs to put more funding into it?
Yeah, I do.
The next person I wanted to interview is one of my friends, and he is from Birmingham. So I wanted to get an outsider's perspective on why London is the way it is, and perhaps through getting this perspective, you could possibly get a refreshing view on these problems that perhaps Londoners cannot seem to acknowledge or solve themselves. Hey, so I wanted to ask you a very important question regarding London. As a resident of Birmingham, I wanted to get an outsider's perspective and ask you about the recent events in London. So the question I wanted to ask is, why do you feel violence is increasing in London today?
That's a very good question. And I think even just before we get into the answer, it's still, again, quite relevant in Birmingham. And I think, again, I haven't read upon this, but this is kind of just what I'm feeling, is this is a very diverse country. And economically, it's not doing so great. So there's a constant, almost caste system that we have in this country. So not like Asian caste system, but I'm talking about caste system where it's like the upper class, middle class, lower class, working class. So a lot of people are migrating to this country because they want to send their kids to good schools. They want to have a life, right? They're coming from maybe parts of the Middle East, which isn't so great. So they're coming into these countries, and the capital like London. Even British people who are born in this country struggle to live in London. For many generations we've lived in this country. So people who migrate to this country in places like East London or just anywhere in London, they have to struggle to survive, essentially, because the parents probably don't have much money. They live in parts of London which it isn't so great economically and, and things. So there's almost like a rage there, like an internal rage that is building up with the parents. So when these kids grow up, they're constantly surrounded by their family who are possibly angry, maybe because they're working too hard, they feel a bit frustrated. And the kids are kind of being brought up in an environment where it's almost like, what's that famous saying? Is it the bite the dog or the dog bite or whatever it's called, right?
The dog bites
something like that, isn't it? It's like every man for himself, essentially.
Okay.
So I feel like as soon as people, or young people, I'd say, who are involved in crime, they get to a certain age where they want to feel this independence. They want to feel like they're doing something for themselves. And due to the environment and due to the economy and the fact that a lot of people who migrate to these countries may not do so well when it comes to education, so they kind of have to use their energy that they have into other things. So that could be crime related, and we kind of see that. I mean, obviously, this is not trying to pull out the race card by any means, but we do see that there is a lot of crime when it comes to people who are not necessarily may not be born in this country. Obviously, people who are born in this country do the crimes, but generally the ethnic groups. Majority of the ethnic groups are also involved in that, and I can say that myself as a British Indian.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
because I've seen that around me. So when these ethnic groups move into certain locations in the country, it's almost like they're there in these poor kind of areas or areas that are not maybe so great, and they kind of have to work up from that. And even as Indians, that happened to us. So in the 1960s, Indians migrated to these kind of areas in Birmingham, London, where, the town wasn't so great. Then economically, they would do well in school, they would do this and that, and then they would kind of move out of the location and go somewhere else. So that is the kind of situation that's happening right now, but it's probably gone to a much worse condition than it was maybe 30 so years ago. So because of that wanting to make money or wanting to, do well or whatever the case may be, this kind of builds that kind of mentality sprouts in the heart. Now, that's obviously not one of the only reasons. It's also the surroundings of the people. What are people doing? What do you call it? Like, is there investment made when it comes to giving children leisure centres and all these kind of activities? Yeah. That's probably not so great in these part of London.
I wanted to interview my friend who is very passionate about what is going on in London at the moment. He will be leaving London soon to pursue other opportunities, but I wanted to ask him this question because he believes a lot about the problems that should be tackled regarding child grooming, acid attacks, especially knife crime. So I knew that he would have a lot to say on this subject matter. Hi, so I wanted to ask you a very important question. I know that obviously you'll be leaving London soon. So the important question I wanted to ask you was regarding London. I wanted to ask, why do you feel violence is increasing in London today?
I believe there's a number of reasons we have violence which is increasing in London. We find there's been cuts in investment in the kind of clubs and facilities that, as I was growing up in London, there was a number of after school activities and clubs and those kind of things which were available. However, with the government cuts lately, a lot of these facilities have been dropped, and we find that that you have kids that are not being invested in, who are finding other mediums to exercise their thoughts. They're having other mediums, other people to talk to who may not be the ideal people to actually affiliate yourself with. People perhaps hanging around on the street, selling drugs, going into gangs and the gang crime kind of thing. We also find that perhaps there's broken homes, people whose their parents are they're not really playing the full responsibility, or perhaps they only have like a single mother, in some cases a single father, where not both of the parents are in the full picture.
So, what do you feel was the solution to tackling violence within London?
The solution, I would say, where you can help young people get employment. There's a lot of people that are not working, and basically employers are not taking youngsters on because they say you haven't got any experience. But how are they actually going to get experience if they don't get started in a workplace?
That's true.
Maybe there should be more training programs, facilities like that.
A lot of youth don't feel like they can have a job to turn to, so they turn to crime. It's just plays easy.
Well, that could be because they have plenty of time on their hands. Drug is a big issue. Once they start taking drugs, obviously not aware of what they're doing. There's drink driving offences.
So it's as if youths, do you feel as if youths need more of an outlet to express themselves, more youth clubs or just play, opportunities to just
it would be very good to have these places put into place, basically like youth clubs for youngsters. But obviously, this time and age, this era, there's hardly any employment going on issues because there's no one there to tackle it all. Yeah. No one seems to be wanting to do things for the youngsters. I find that then the problem is where they're not getting anywhere, and then they start doing these crimes and they just get deeper and deeper.
So I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is, aside from obviously you were saying about increasing funding, what do you feel is the solution to tackling violence in London?
I guess a proper plan needs to be in place. Again, resources, there needs to be more people, police officers out there, and more money needs to be put in to, fight certain crimes, like for example, knife crime, for example, there needs to be people in the right places to protect these things from happening, look at the knife crimes that are happening in so many locations and it's increased. So I don't feel like enough is being done to catch these people, to stop these things from happening, to make it a safe environment for people to kind of go out, to be able to go out. And obviously, if people are afraid of going out, it's really unsafe. You could go out and you could get knifed, you could have acid thrown in your face. It is really dangerous. And I feel like more needs to be done to put officers in places where these things are happening, to protect people, to make them feel safe and that they can go outside of their own houses freely without having to be scared of what's going to happen to them.
I wanted to ask you about what do you feel are the solutions to the violence that is increasing within London?
See, it's a very difficult question to answer because there's a lot of factors to it. And if I had to be completely honest, a solution is very difficult because we live in a society where everyone is categorizing someone in some sort of group, and this might be done in a subconscious way that they don't realize. So the easiest one could be race, right? We categorize people into different races. We discriminate against people. The great thing about England is, unlike America, we have racism. We have subtle racism. In America, what they do is they take it on the chest and they will be racist to that person. And it probably happens in this country too, but in this country, majority of it is subtle racism. They might make one-liners, or they might think something in their head, but they're not going to say it. So we have discrimination all the way there, and even as Indians, ethnic groups, we do it to each other. We need to stop that. If that goes, then I think violence can go, and I don't know what the solution would be to make that specific kind of you and me go away. Maybe that might be finding a mutual ground in something that could be. Ethnic minority groups, when they come into the country, there needs to be a bridge between the people born in this country and them, because obviously we know that there is a big divide between the foreign people and then the British-born people. So if we find a connection between those two and a big mutual ground, then I think it can work. But, we live in a society, regardless of, even if there is no crime in the city, there is a divide. We put people in subgroups and, et cetera, et cetera. So if that goes, then I think we have a good way of stopping crime. And, I could easily say things like, oh, yeah, the leisure centres and, the awareness societies, and they obviously do help because they've, helped a lot of people as well. But if we really want to make an effort to actually, cover the mass, then I think it's more of an internal thing than an external thing.
So, this is a follow-up question. So, what do you feel is the solution to all of these problems within London?
I think it's a community, solution where we all have to come together. We all have to support each other. I think it's not fair to say that the problem will be resolved with the increase in the knife crime, gun crime, etc. Just by having these, activities and extracurricular activities and youth clubs after school. I think we all have to come together. We all have to play a part in our role in making a better society. We have to give better role models to these, to our the younger generation that are growing up. We have to, be there to support them and, be the person who they can look up to and have, who they can actually talk to and be able to relate to and be familiar with. I believe we should really set the trend in trying to eradicate these, nonsense and stupid, like postcode wars and even the need to actually delve into making money just by drugs and the like.
The person I wanted to interview is myself. The 4 interviews that I've gone through, I've heard many different views from everyone. Everyone has had their own unique take on it, whether it's about the fact that lots of youths are unemployed, the fact that, there's not enough stop and searches and just cuts in, security and, the police, whether there's just a clash of cultures and just how, it's the UK has kind of, it doesn't have its own identity. And then I've also heard, opinions about the fact that, again, back to youths, it's about, the lack of opportunities to express themselves, youth clubs and and just a lot of it has to also do with community and just the lack of community. There's just too much division. And so to answer both questions, why violence is increasing in London and the solution, I'll have to say that why I feel violence is increasing in London is pretty much because of, that word community. There's just a lack of it. There's too much division, and it's a hard question to answer when you're put on the spot. Even putting myself on the spot to answer this question, it's very difficult. And there's a lot of things I could say about all of what what has been happening. You could say, child grooming is happening, acid attacks, knife attacks. I mean, these are different things, but at the same time, do they have similar? Do they all come back to one thing about what happens within a household, whether it's, the parents, the upbringing in schools, what is taught, the histories that are taught? Do certain races feel kind of threatened by others based on the fact that, minorities in this country just feeling, distant, and then you get other people who that supposedly are, native to this country having issues with minorities and their cultures, and it's just, there's not a smooth blend, and it just feels as if almost anarchy is bound to come out of it, because again, everything is so subtle, it's so below the surface, and then it just increases, and then boom, it just happens. So for me, I wanted to kind of look at it more from, I guess, a psychological point of view. There are obviously outlets that we could do, certain cuts. I always see lots of car parks, but then I feel like, where are the youth clubs? Where are the outdoor facilities, not just only indoor but outdoor facilities that give people just a chance to do something other than be stuck to the technology that's in front of them, which is bound to again create a violent domino effect. So when it comes to the solution, I want to say that for me, I've always personally felt like particular things I've always felt that should be put in place. So you see so many incidents happen at train stations and tube stations, dangerous things. And I always feel like every single train station should almost have it should abide by a certain bunch of procedures almost. It should have, I feel like every train or tube station should have a security guard in place, and that security guard should be trained to handle, physical close quarters combat. They should be allowed to be equipped with a stun gun that makes them feel secure. And I feel like every train station, that whether they have to do shifts, they should have it. Like, not just train stations, but just in many places, there just needs to be more security. Even if shopping, just normal shops, corner shops, everything. Again, you just have to invest in this security. You do. One person can make a huge difference, and I've seen in other countries how they have security, how, you see certain airports with people having their, guns out. And I just think if a lot of this security was in place, a lot of the crimes would obviously not happen. I'm not saying that would solve the issue, but it's almost like it's definitely a lot to do with community, and that has to be solved. But a lot of these things would definitely help lower the the casualties and the amount of things that happen, because I feel almost as if people in this country, you don't know who's going to be there in certain situations. You could be in a tube station and something could go down, and you could have a bunch of people attacking you or something, and knife attack, it could happen straight out of nowhere, and it's just one of those things that no one was there to help you, or maybe people were there but they was scared. It's just, what can you do really? And then there's such things like you're not allowed to carry pepper spray or the like, and so it's almost as if you're put into a position where you're not meant to. You're meant to just not do anything, but you have to do something. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you have to survive, and a lot of these things are happening. You're starting to question whether it's just random, whether people are just creating a ruckus so that the government takes notice, so that things actually happen, productive things happen, because you can't keep going on and having these years pass by, because if this country really does want to be an independent nation, then they have to get it together, because we're a small island, and we really have to stick together and make things happen. So I could keep going on about this, but again, it's just, this is what I can say, being put on the spot, and obviously you could write down your points and views, but again, it's all about taking action and promoting change. So I want to say thank you very much for watching this video, and I want to thank everyone who took their time to be a part of this video, the interviews, and their just really thoughtful and eloquent answers. And at the end of the day, it's not about the destination. Is obviously where we want is complete peace, but it's not about that destination, it's about the journey, and we're going to take that journey to get there each and every single day. So that's that, and Let's make a positive change from now.